That's called capitalism. That's called competition. That works.
The left likes to talk a lot about landlords, but how often do we talk to them? We're here at the National Landlord Investment Show in central London to talk to a very misunderstood group of well-meaning asset owners about how they feel for a change.
The market has been skewed away from landlords, and it's very tricky for landlords now to provide a proper service without many of them losing money on the deals at the moment because of interest rate rises.
Definitely in the last 3-4 years you've seen your profit margins slash to the point where it's not a short-term gain, 100% not. You know, you're in it for the long run, and I think with all these landlords getting out of it, there's just not enough in it for us to do it.
And are you making a good return at the moment?
Not at the moment, no. I have been, but until the recent mortgage rate rises, it was good. I'd describe it as okay, but not good anymore.
How are things in the market for you at the moment?
Very good. Yeah, the rentals are fantastic.
Yeah, because rents are going up and up,
Yeah,
I've heard.
Exactly, yeah.
How have your tenants reacted to the increase in the rent?
Not too good. Not too good. No.
What was their reaction?
Well, they might not be able to afford the rent, so...
If it does, push comes to shove, would you be willing to wave goodbye?
I think so, yes. I mean, they can be replaced very easily because there just aren't enough properties to go around at the moment. So people are sort of, they're totally going crazy. Oh, I've got to get a property to live in. So.
Do you think they might be going crazy because the cost of living is spiralling?
Yeah, exactly. So it's very, very high. But it's the agent that puts the rent up, not myself. So I think it's done automatically after a year.
Have you had to increase your rents at the moment? I know rates are going up, etc.
I've not had to, but the management agent I use are basically coming to me and saying, we can get X amount more this year.
You didn't personally feel like you needed to, but there was an opportunity to, so you sort of took it.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm quite fortunate. I sold my business 6 years ago, so I've got very little in the way of finance loans. It's all personal money, so I'm quite fortunate in that I haven't got mortgages on the property, so didn't have to increase the rent, but just following the market trends, really. I
mean, it's a cost of living crisis at the moment, rates are spiralling. Do you think that renters or landlords have a tougher time of it at the moment?
I think renters, certainly, yeah.
Have you ever considered giving your renters a reduction because of the kind of cost of living crisis?
I should say yes. No. Now I've stopped work and I've effectively semi-retired from my main job, so I do need that income. So short answer is no.
Would you say that being a landlord is a relatively easy way to make money?
No, I wouldn't. I think that the more skilled you are, the easier it becomes, but there are obviously challenges that come with anything in business. But I think there's a lot of provisions you can put in place to be able to better your chances of success. Certainly being an ethical landlord with a tenant mentality always helps.
What does it mean to be an ethical landlord?
Everything. That's what Rockstar Property is about. It's becoming that landlord that I wish I always had.
Have your rents increased? I presume your rents have increased in the past few months, years, due to rising rates?
No. So everything that Rockstar does is on the long term. The fixed rates that we have in place are 5 years minimum. The tenancy contracts are 3 years. We rent to companies usually. So we're not on a daily basis increasing rent, but we just have a good contract in place with every tenant that we have that increases the rent by about 5% per year.
I suppose the situation we have now is that, as you know, wages are being held flat by bosses who are, worried about a wage price spiral, as it were. But food bills are going up, energy bills are skyrocketing, and rents are going up. So, what do we do about that? Landlords are increasing their rents, even despite the fact that their renters' incomes are not increasing.
I think it's a fair point to make, but I would equally say on the flip side that not all landlords are doing the same. I can only speak for myself. We are not exponentially increasing rent to counterbalance increase of interest rates, for example, because we've got a number of refinances coming up next year, but we don't really have any this year because we've just locked in. We've got over 60 of these HMOs now. But I think that Again, the smaller time landlords would probably have to penny pinch on every sort of angle they can, whereas with myself it's more of what is the right thing for the tenants, because the portfolio can afford to reduce a rent by 5%, for example. You know, and I'm personally all about tenant welfare, and I favour the tenant despite being a long-time landlord. So it is very important for me to make sure that the tenant is in the best position, because I feel like increasing rent and putting the tenant in a bad position is only going to get you just not far down the line. Like I said at the beginning, everything we have done is on the long term, and if there's no longevity in having a tenant that cannot afford to pay their rent.
You're a property investor. Tell me a bit about that.
We are working closely with landlords to help them get better return of investment for their properties.
How much might you be able to increase a landlord's rent, for example? Like, what kinds of rent increases are you able to gain through sourcing higher value tenants?
From experience, possibly between 10 and 20% higher than what they get now.
Wow. Okay. And so does that ever involve needing to ask tenants to leave who can't pay the kinds of rents that you're that you're asking?
That's another beautiful thing, actually, that we present to landlords, because they deal directly with us. They don't need to deal with any tenants whatsoever, and this is a big thing for tenants.
So you do the dirty work?
That's correct. We deal with tenants, we deal with cleaning, with small maintenance. Basically, they just sit down, relax, have their holidays and whatever time with families, do whatever they want, and we pay guaranteed rent at a certain time.
So you ensure that really being a landlord isn't a job, doesn't need to be work, it can just be a holiday.
I think a property investor like me is a perfect solution for landlords.
Are you a landlord yourself?
Yes, I am.
How many properties are in your portfolio?
A few of them.
A few of them. And do you consider yourself a successful landlord?
Yes.
Yeah. And do you consider yourself to make a good return at the moment? I know things are hard for landlords.
It's hard for landlords right now.
Have you had to increase your rents recently?
We had to, otherwise no point to have properties.
What percentage did you have to increase your rents?
4-ish, 5.
And how did your tenants react?
They haven't got any choice, unfortunately.
Did they, ask for a rent reduction, or did they, ask you not to do it?
No chance.
No. Okay.
I'm a bit damp, but I'm here because this building is full of landlords. This is the organised landlord class inside this building, finding out how they can pay less tax, finding out how they can maximise their profit from renters. And I'm here because I'm thinking, well, I'm already paying the majority of my income on rent. I'm waiting to hear from my landlord about a new contract. God knows how much the rent is going to go up by. That might mean I've got to leave the area. That might mean I've got to move out to God knows where. And we're all pissed off. We're not going to have it anymore. The rents are going up and up and up. There's nothing to stop landlords from doing that. So we need action by the government. We need to get protections in to stop rents being put up the way they are now.
Have you yourself been affected by the housing crisis, coinciding with the cost of living crisis?
Yeah, I was evicted last year because the landlord put up the rent by £400.
£400 a month?
£400 a month. And I can't afford that. I don't know anyone who can afford that. And that's horrible. That's just a common story that we're hearing every day.
How much of your income would it have been to pay that £400 a month increase? Would it have been half your income, a ridiculous proportion of your income?
Well, it's already half, so it would have been maybe 60-70% of my income going on my rent, just for my rent, working half my week just to pay my landlords.
I'm a landlord. I do I was here today because we do a Sky TV show called Property Elevator, which is a bit like Dragon's Den. And I'm one of the angels on the show, and people come and pitch to us their property projects for funding. My name is Ranjan Bhattacharya. I've been investing and developing properties for the last 30 years. I specialise in taking defunct commercial buildings and converting them to alternative uses. There's a lot of misrepresentation of landlords. If I'm taking a building that's derelict, which was formerly a commercial property, and I've converted it for residential use, I'm introducing new housing supply. And I'm building a block of apartments, or converting this building into a block of apartments optimised for what people want when they're renting.
A luxury housing block that you might make, that you might kind of refurbish, let's say, might only be affordable to people on six-figure salaries. You know, the kinds of people that can afford to live in London these days are not ordinary people.
Yes, but we are the private sector. So we choose as a company to specialise in whatever area of the market that we want to focus on. What Britain needs for growth is a flexible labour force, a flexible labour market that can move around where the work is. And without a strong private sector, a private rental sector, you do not have a flexible workforce. Without a flexible workforce, you do not have a strong economy. Without a strong economy, you don't have the tax revenue to feed into society's safety net for people who need a little bit of support. The thing is, there is a charitable element, there's a social element to housing, but that is up to the government to provide, not for private companies. This is a mixed market, and we all have our place in the market. I went over to have a word with those people. They shouted me down. They're entrenched in their belief. I deal with thousands of landlords through my training programs, and I know that these people do not represent the truth that is out there.
You think the truth is that renters broadly love their landlords?
Sorry?
Truth is that renters actually do love their landlords?
I don't know whether love is the right word. You know, whether people are happy in their properties, whether people believe they're getting a service, that is a different issue. Love is completely different. It's not Valentine's Day.
You haven't got a job. Your job is... I have a job. Madam, with the greatest of respect, I have a job. And my job is being responsible for all my tenants. And when they email me saying the boiler isn't working, or the windows aren't opening, or there's mold, I have to respond straight away. Because if I don't, right, they're going to go next door where the landlord will have a property where it will have no mold or a boiler working. That's called capitalism. That's called competition. That works.
So you're getting a bit worked up about what's happening over here. Do you think that they've got the wrong end of the stick?
Like children to parents, they run, mummy, daddy, government, take care of me. Take care of me, government. Government's the answer. Government is not the answer.
But I suppose that they're not just saying that government's the answer. They're saying that the private landlords should themselves have compassion and shouldn't just gouge renters for everything that they're worth in the cost of living crisis.
I would personally argue that vast majority of landlords have great compassion. But
have you increased your rents during the cost of living crisis?
Of course, because we're passing on our costs in turns.
But is that compassionate?
Well, if we don't pass on our rents, if we don't pass on inflation, tax hikes, interest rates hikes, then the property will be repossessed and then no one will have a home. So we have no choice but to pass on some, not all, but some of the costs, right?
Do you mind me asking how many properties are in your portfolio?
In London specifically?
Altogether?
About 25.
And so are you not able to absorb any kind of contraction of your margins during, it's an asset, its value increases and decreases. You might have, no one's made a bad bet, let's say, but you might have misread the forecast or just not predicted that we were going to have a housing crisis or a war in Ukraine, or a cost of living crisis, I should say. But, surely landlords with foresight should be able to weather that storm and sort of absorb some of those costs in the knowledge that their asset will increase in value in the future.
With regards to the cost of living, landlords look, they're not stupid. They're not going to evict tenants on a whim. They want...
But like 300,000 tenants have been evicted on the whim of landlords in the cost of living crisis.
Yeah, and why is that? Because government, again, are saying they're going to get rid of Section 21. They're imposing all these extra taxes. I mean, most landlords, let's be frank, pardon my language, most small landlords haven't got a pot to piss in. I mean, this whole charade here is a joke because most small landlords are poor, desperately poor,
But also, a large proportion of landlords, possibly even half of landlords, aren't even mortgaged, like don't even have loans. We spoke to a landlord today who said, "I don't need to increase the rents. I don't have any loans, but I'm doing it because the market's going that way."
Well, good luck to him. But I mean,
really,
what I would say, seriously in earnest, is that most small landlords with 1, 2, 3 units, heavily mortgaged to the hilt, they are desperate to make it work. They want good paying tenants and they want to keep them, and they would have no desire to raise rents and risk losing those tenants if they weren't forced to do so. All we want to do as landlords is build homes and provide sustainable homes for tenants, right? So they have good quality homes, long-term homes to live in. But government
You're allowed to swear.
They fuck it up non-stop. They always do it. And the less government involvement we have, the better. That's why all these people are so deluded here. They are directing it here at the private sector when they should be directing it at government. We should be pushing for less regulation, less taxation, not more.
Do you think that landlords who say that they're having a tough time, just like renters in the cost of living crisis, have a point?
No. They don't, because they earn so much more than us and are quite literally making money off of our paychecks.
Yeah.
They have no right to say that.
Yeah. I mean, some of them are saying, well, our rate rises, our mortgage rates have gone up by sometimes 10, 20, 100, multiple hundreds of %. Is it fair that they pass those costs on to their renters?
It's not fair. It's actually a personal problem of theirs. I have no idea why they're outsourcing the payments that they should be making on their homes that they shouldn't own to us as renters. Yeah. If you shouldn't own the homes in the first place. So if you're having problems with the mortgage constantly going up, you shouldn't be taking it up with your tenants.
Yeah. Do you think that there isn't sufficient politicization of renters? Some guy said something to me which I thought was quite interesting earlier. He said 99% of my tenants have never complained, don't care about what's happening or whatever. Do you think that's true? And if so, do you think that's maybe a problem that renters aren't politicized enough against the class warfare that is landlordism?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a lot of apathy in general. I think people have these things happen to, and there isn't anything you can really do legally. For me, there's nothing I could do in that situation. I had to leave in 2 months or a month or whatever the situation was. But I think in general there's things that we can do all together. We can campaign for stuff. We can push for rent controls, push for limits on home ownership, those kinds of things that might make it more accessible to a large group of people.
Renters across the UK are desperate. In this city alone, renters are paying 40% of their income to pay someone else's mortgage. The question is, who in this building is to blame? Everyone we spoke to today gave us a different answer. For property investors, it's councils who let them chop up townhouses into HMOs. For landlords, it's letting agents who pressure them to up the rents on their portfolios. For small-time landlords, it's big, rogue landlords who give the industry a bad name. The truth is, it's the whole lot of them. In the UK's commoditised housing market, every one of these groups depends entirely on the other for its survival. Tories need landlords' votes, property investors need landlords' properties, and landlords need ever-increasing pay packets. The whole system is kept in a delicate balance, one entirely stacked against renters, which is why nothing ever changes.